In the year 193 AD, Rome was not conquered. It was sold. The Roman Empire had survived invasions, civil wars, assassinations, and centuries of political chaos. But then something happened so outrageous that even ancient historians treated it as a moment of deep shame. The throne of Rome, the most powerful position in the known world, was offered to the highest bidder, and one man bought it. The story began with a murder. On the last day of December, in the year 192 AD, Emperor Commodus was strangled to death inside the imperial palace. Commodus had ruled Rome for more than a decade. Over time, he had become increasingly unpredictable, theatrical, and dangerous. He presented himself as a living god. He fought in gladiator arenas for public spectacle, and he surrounded himself with loyal supporters while alienating much of the Roman elite. When he died, powerful officials moved quickly. They wanted to prevent the capital from falling into chaos. So they elevated an elderly senator named Pertinax to the throne. Pertinax had a reputation for discipline, honesty, and old-fashioned Roman seriousness. After years of instability under Commodus, many believed Rome finally had a ruler who could restore order. For a brief moment, it seemed the empire had found the right man. But there was one major problem: the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorians were supposed to be the emperor's personal protectors. Stationed near Rome, they guarded the palace, protected the ruler, and stood at the center of imperial power. But over time, they had become something far more dangerous. They were no longer just bodyguards. They were kingmakers. They had weapons. They had political influence. And they had direct access to the emperor. They also understood something that everyone in Rome feared. No emperor could survive without them. Pertinax tried to restore discipline almost immediately. He cut wasteful spending. He attempted reforms. And most importantly, he refused to shower the Praetorian Guard with the enormous rewards they expected after Commodus's death. The guards were furious. To them, a new emperor meant a new payday. Pertinax saw it differently. He believed the empire needed order, not bribery. That belief cost him his life. Just 86 days after becoming emperor, hundreds of armed Praetorians stormed the imperial palace. Pertinax tried to reason with them. He faced the soldiers directly, hoping his authority and reputation would calm the situation. But the guards had not come to negotiate. They cut him down inside the palace. Rome had lost another ruler. But what happened next was even more shocking. After murdering the emperor they were sworn to protect, the Praetorian Guard faced a problem. They controlled the throne, but none of them had a legitimate claim to rule. So they came up with a solution. They would sell it. Inside their fortified camp outside Rome, the Praetorians announced what was effectively an auction for the empire itself. The most powerful office in the Roman world was no longer being decided by tradition, law, or military achievement. It was being negotiated for cash. Wealthy and ambitious men began bargaining with the soldiers. The prize was not a province. It was not a military command. It was not a palace, a title, or a fortune. The prize was Rome. Two main candidates emerged. One was Titus Flavius Sulpicius, a respected politician and the father-in-law of the murdered Pertinax. He offered a large payment to every Praetorian soldier in exchange for their support. Then another man entered the contest. His name was Didius Julianus. Julianus was wealthy, experienced, and ambitious. When he heard what was happening, he rushed to the Praetorian camp and began bidding against Sulpicius. The scene was almost unbelievable. Outside the walls, men competed for the right to rule the Roman Empire. Inside the camp, armed soldiers listened. Offer after offer was shouted. The throne of Augustus, Trajan, and Marcus Aurelius was being treated like a piece of property. The empire was being sold like real estate. Finally, Julianus made the larger promise. He offered each Praetorian guardsman more money than his rival. The soldiers accepted. The auction was over. Didius Julianus had purchased the Roman Empire. The Senate was then pressured to recognize him as emperor. Surrounded by armed guards and facing the reality of Praetorian power, the senators formally approved the decision. On paper, Julianus was now emperor. In reality, almost nobody accepted him. News of the auction spread rapidly through Rome and across the empire. The reaction was disgust. Roman citizens were outraged. Senators were embarrassed. Provincial governors were alarmed. The idea that Rome's highest office had been sold for money shattered Julianus's legitimacy before he could even begin to rule. Crowds gathered in the streets. They mocked him openly. Some cursed him as he passed. Others called for the armies to remove him. Julianus had bought the throne, but he had not bought respect, and he had not bought loyalty. Far from Rome, powerful commanders saw their opportunity. Septimius Severus, governor of Pannonia, commanded battle-hardened legions along the Danube frontier. Pescennius Niger controlled forces in the eastern provinces. Clodius Albinus held authority in Britain. Each man had soldiers. Each man had ambition. And each man understood that Julianus was weak. But Severus moved first. His troops proclaimed him emperor. Then he began marching toward Rome with remarkable speed. He did not present himself as a rebel. He presented himself as an avenger of Pertinax, a defender of Roman honor, a man coming to punish the corruption that had humiliated the empire. As Severus advanced, support for Julianus collapsed. The Senate began distancing itself from the man it had recently recognized. The people of Rome offered little resistance. Even the Praetorian Guard, whose loyalty had been purchased, showed little interest in fighting experienced frontier legions. Julianus was trapped. He had paid for power, but power was slipping away from him day by day. The throne he had bought was becoming a death sentence. After only 66 days as emperor, his rule came to an end. In June of 193 AD, the Senate declared him an enemy of the state. Shortly afterward, Didius Julianus was executed inside the imperial palace. According to ancient accounts, his final words reflected confusion and disbelief. He could not understand why he had to die. The man who bought an empire had barely managed to keep it. When Septimius Severus entered Rome, he immediately dealt with the Praetorian Guard. He stripped them of their authority. He disarmed them. He dismissed many of the soldiers involved in the auction. Then he replaced them with troops loyal to himself. The message was clear. The men who had sold the empire would no longer control it. But the crisis was not over. Severus still had to defeat rival claimants in a brutal series of civil wars before securing full control. The auction of Rome had not simply embarrassed the empire. It had triggered a larger struggle for power, one that revealed how fragile the imperial system had become. Today, the story remains one of the most astonishing episodes in Roman history. Empires are often imagined as permanent structures built on law, tradition, and authority. But in 193 AD, that illusion briefly collapsed. Beneath the marble temples, military parades, and symbols of Roman greatness was a system vulnerable to greed, ambition, and force. The Roman Empire was not conquered that day. It did not fall. But for one extraordinary moment, the most powerful state in the Western world became something almost unimaginable. A prize, and the highest bidder one. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below and tell me what you'd like to see next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more videos like this.